What's up, guys? I'm LQ. This is the LQ Review. Thank you so much for joining me right here at my YouTube channel. This is where we talk about all the geeky, nerdy stuff that we love to talk about. Movies, video games, comic books, and TV shows. And right now, gotta talk about Masters of the Universe Revelations Part 2. Now, if you'll remember, right here on this channel, when I reviewed Part 1, I hated it. I hated Masters of the Universe Revelations Part 1. I'm a huge fan of Masters of the Universe. Look, I got the original Castle Grayskull right there. You can't see it, but this wall right here is filled with original 1983, 1984 Masters of the Universe action figures. Right over there, on that wall, I've got almost the entire line of the new Origins Masters of the Universe. I've got some of the Revelations characters. Even though I didn't like Part 1, I still had to get some of the Revelations characters. I even have right there, I have some of the characters from the new Netflix series, Masters of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Guys, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. Masters of the Universe was my first fandom. It was my first fandom. It was the first thing in my life that I was a fan of. So it means a lot to me. And I hated Part 1. I hated Part 1 for a lot of reasons. Number one, killing off He-Man in the first episode, and then bringing him back to life at the end, only to kill him again, because as we found out in Part 2, he didn't die. But it was awful. I was like, how can you make a Masters of the Universe movie and completely write out Adam and He-Man? I thought it was ridiculous. To kill Orko, I was like, what is happening here? Why are they doing this? It's like, do they hate Masters of the Universe? Tila, oh my gosh. I was like, apparently Kevin Smith and Netflix don't understand the character of Tila at all. This idea that she would get mad at her friend who just died because he was keeping a secret from her, that was completely out of character for Tila. And that's something that actually still bothers me, because that was out of character for Tila. And then to butcher up, give her the side shave of, we got to give a strong, powerful woman a side shave. Because, right? Am I right? So, I hated Season 1. It was everything that I hate about modern entertainment. Everything I hate about it. Pandering. It was pandering. And I hated it. It was pandering, and it was using our fandom to sell tickets. Now, I know it's a Netflix show, but it was using our fandom to get our butts in the seats, and then not delivering what they promised. Everything I hate about modern entertainment was wrapped up in Part 1. So I thought, hey, I even toyed with the idea of not watching Part 2. I toyed with it. I was like, do I want to really give Netflix these clicks, right? Do I want to give them do I want to justify this existing by watching it? But I was like, you know what? I'm a Masters of the Universe fan. I'm going to hate watch this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to hate watch it. I'm going to have vitriol and venom in my eyes as I'm watching it. I'll be gritting my teeth the entire time. I'm gonna hate it. I wanted to hate it. But a very surprising thing happened. And it makes, it's one of those things where it reminds me that we should finish a story before we're able to judge the book, right? You can't read 2 chapters and then hate the book. I loved Part 2. I loved it. Let me say that again, because it shocks me that I said it. I loved Part 2. In fact, I loved Part 2 so much, it made Part 1 good. I need to go back and rewatch Part 1 now, because everything they did in Part 2 that kind of wrapped up the story, it wrapped up threads that were created in Part 1. Some of those threads I hated. But they were able to take those threads, continue the story, and bring them to a place that I was okay with. In some cases, bring them to a place that I loved. So, we found out that Adam was not killed at the end of Part 1, and Tila is able to get, they're able to do battle with Skeletor. Tila Duncan, Aphra, Cringer, they're able to do battle with Duncan, and Tila is able to figure out that she's got some magic, she's got some powers. She's actually in this case, the Sorceress. The Sorceress was able to get, the heroes out of there. The Sorceress is then killed by Skeletor, who at this point is Skelegod. And he's working with Evil Lyn, working with Beastman, and he's able to kill the Sorcerer. And now the power of Grayskull is entirely his. Meanwhile, our team is transported back to Eternos. And Skelegod, he creates this army of demons to attack Eternos. And our heroes are rescued by Fisto and Clampchamp. It was a nice cameo by those two. Fisto said that he wanted to fist something, and that but it was a nice cameo made by those two. And then they're in the palace. They're fighting these demons. And Skeletor comes in, and they realize, hey, this is it. We got Adam, we got Tila. Tila, by the way, was able to use magic to heal Adam. She starts realizing that she has power, and she's developing the power. So she's able to use magic to heal Adam. But her, Adam, Aphra, and Cringer, they're surrounded. At this point, it's pretty much a done deal. They're going to die. Skeletor comes in. He's gonna lay the hurt down on him until Adam says, the sword was a conduit. The power was always mine. And he holds up his hands and he says, I have the power. And it comes down and it turns him into Berserker He-Man. He's basically the Hulk, but he looks like He-Man. And we see Adam go crazy, and he takes out all these bad guys, and he fights Skelegod, and Tila ends up using the same power that the Sorceress used. Tila uses that power to transport them away from there. Because at the end of the day, she knows that this is still a battle that cannot be won. So they transport them, where they transport them? To Point Dread. Point Dread. Do we remember Point Dread? If you were a collector of the toys in the 80s, you remember Point Dread. You remember Point Dread. It was actually an add-on to Castle Grayskull, and it had the Talon Fighter that went on top of it. Where's my Talon Fighter at? It's right there. Unfortunately, I don't have Point Dread anymore. I lost Point Dread when I was a kid, but I still have the Talon Fighter, and it's right there. So they end up being transported to Point Dread. It's in the Mystic Mountains. It's where they can hide from Skeletor and his power. King Randor is there, and King Randor is able to, talk to Adam. The sun is coming out. The sun's going down. They had that moment. Anyways, Randor is able to calm down Berserker He-Man, and father and son are able to reconcile, and they're able to prepare for the coming war. Meanwhile, we learn that Evil Lyn is feeling very marginalized by Skeletor, to the point where she wants to take control. At one point, Skeletor shows her the kind of the reality of the cosmos, and she comes to this conclusion that we are so insignificant that the only thing she can do that gives her significance is wiping everything out. So she's able to attempt to seduce Skeletor. That's it. That's what happened. She tried to seduce him, and that got him to drop the sword. She takes the sword, and she takes the power of Grayskull, which leads to Skeletor eventually having to team up with He-Man. We've seen this before, right? Now Skeletor's teaming up with Adam. With Adam, because he even though he can turn into Berserker He-Man whenever he wants by raising his hands and saying he has the power, he can't control it. So he knows that to become the true He-Man, he has to get the sword from Evil Lyn. So Adam and Skeletor, they devise a plan to enter Castle Grayskull and fight Evil Lyn. It's not the first time that Skeletor and He-Man have teamed up. They've actually teamed up several times in the original series. Notably, the Christmas special. Remember the Christmas special where Skeletor literally became a good guy? Yeah, there's a history of Skeletor teaming up with He-Man. So I was fine with it. I was fine with that. They battle Evil Lyn. He-Man, Cringer, Skeletor, and Panther, they battle Evil Lyn. Panther has a noble death. And meanwhile, we learn that this is a distraction. This is a distraction because in the bowels of Castle Grayskull, Tila and Aphra are trying to find the power because Tila has accepted her destiny to become the new sorceress. Now, some people who don't know, they're going to be like, well, this just furthers the storyline of her being the hero and He-Man being a secondary character. Alright, I had a problem with the way they handled Tila in part 1. I did. But there is precedence for Tila becoming the new sorceress. If you've read the comics, He-Man, the Eternia War, then you know what I'm talking about. He-Man, the Eternia War, there was a run of DC Comics that started with a 6-issue miniseries called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And then it went into an ongoing that went, I want to say like 32 issues, called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but it was an ongoing. And the ongoing led to the Eternia War. And then the Eternia War lasted like 19 issues, I think. And it was, in my opinion, those 6, 32, 19 issues, however many that is, that's the best story that's ever been told in the Masters of the Universe. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And in this storyline, Tila becomes the new sorceress. So as I'm watching this in Masters of the Universe Revelations, I can't help but think that they pulled this right out of the comics that I adore. And again, we know from the original series, that Tila is the daughter of the sorceress and the daughter of Duncan. This is all canon. It's all stuff that we know. So I have zero issue with Tila becoming the new sorceress. In fact, I applaud it because it shows just how much they cared to go into the expanded history of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So then, while He-Man and Skeletor and Cringer and Panther, they're the distraction, they're fighting Evil Lyn. Tila, Aphra, and Duncan, they're in the bowels of Castle Grayskull. There's some nice cameos down there from some bad guys, especially a cameo from a bad guy from He-Man the movie, Masters of the Universe the movie. Remember Blade? The guy who was never in the cartoon, never an action figure, but he showed up in the movie. He was in this. So that was kind of cool. That was a fun callback. Meanwhile, King Randor, he's getting ready to lead the army of Eternia to do battle with the forces of the evil forces of Evil Lyn and Castle Grayskull. And we have almost a Rise of Skywalker moment where everybody from Eternia shows up. You got Buzz Off showing up. You've got the Stratos, not Stratos, Zor and his people showing up. During the course of the battle, we have a fun cameo from Ram Man. There's just a lot of... It was that Rise of Skywalker moment where everybody shows up to fight, right? Even villagers showed up with their pitchforks and their clubs and everything. It was a nice moment. And then Evil Lyn calls on the dark armies of Grayskull, and they're led by Scareglow. It was kind of cool having Scareglow back, but she brings out the dead, right? Basically, she raises the dead to do battle with the forces of Eternia. In the process of raising the dead, though, she brings back Orko. Only now, Orko That was my name. Yes. Orko the Grey. I am Orko the White. I mean, that was definitely the feel that it gave me. Orko is now dressed in white, and he was far more powerful than he was before. Much more competent. There was even a point where he was fighting in 2 different spots at once. Just a completely off-the-charts power level for Orko. Orko does battle with Scareglow, and that's a nice continuation, a nice callback to the part 1. I hated what they did with Orko in part 1. Hated it. I thought it was disrespectful to the character. I didn't know what they had in mind now. I didn't know what they had in mind for the end. All right. So we get to the final battle between the Sorceress and Evil Lyn. And again, I'm fine with this. I don't need He-Man to be the one to defeat Evil Lyn. He-Man has his own battle with Skeletor. Because, of course, Skeletor betrays He-Man, and they do battle. And, so there's 2 big fights happening at once. You have He-Man versus Skeletor, and then Evil Lyn versus the Sorceress, the new Sorceress, Tila. I'm not going to necessarily sit here and say how it all concludes, but Castle Grayskull saved, and we have a new Sorceress, and Skeletor is defeated, but not killed. And one of my favorite parts of this whole 5-episode arc was right at the very end, we see the fate of Skeletor. And the direction that they're taking it in, I hope we get another season of this. I hope we get another season of this. If you're a fan of the original cartoon, if you're a fan of the comics, if you're a fan of She-Ra, if you know who Hordak is, yeah, we need a 3rd season, because the ending was like, what? So, all right, so let's wrap this up. First of all, I'm not some fanboy who digs in his heels when he has an opinion and is unable to ever change his opinion. I'm not that person. And I'm happy to say I really liked this. I really liked part 2. I liked it so much that I'm going to go back and rewatch part 1, and I think I'm going to like it too. That's how good part 2 was. It was so good it made part 1 good. So, let it be known that LQ is willing to change his opinion. I'm not some unreasonable fanboy who can't be persuaded by good storytelling, because this was good. So, what did you think of Masters of the Universe Revelations Part 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Did it change your perception of Part 1, or did it not? Or tell me about that relationship between Part 2 and Part 1. For me, I wish that they would have released both parts at the same time. I think it would have been much better, and I think that the whole viewing experience would have been much more pleasant. And I don't think you would have had the outrage that you had. There's a lot of outrage after Part 1. And I don't think you would have had that here if they would have shown all 10 episodes at the same time. I mean, they even dialed down the woke stuff in Part 2. Now, yeah, of course, there's some woke stuff there. It's 2021. Woke stuff has to be in everything. But they even dialed that down. It's like Part 2, it was more about storytelling than anything else. And I really appreciated that. So, let me know what you thought. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. And until next time, we'll see you guys later. Hey guys, it's LQ with the LQ Review. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me.